Hello everyone, so today we're going to be talking about another play-by-play. This is going to be a pretty dynamic play-by-play. There's going to be a lot of things we're going to be talking about. It's going to be infantry, mortars, vehicle, and objectives. So we'll start off with the objectives and kind of paint the picture of what's going on right now. So this is a US versus Russia engagement. It's about a 5-minute engagement, so one of the longer ones. But essentially, I am a squad leader riding passenger and my striker. We're right off the bat in Kora Valley AAS V1. And in Kora Valley AAS V1, the second caps are very interesting. You have Hemp Farm and then Southwest, which is kind of off camera, which is the Russian second cap. And after you take the first two caps, it splits. And this is a very interesting mechanic on this map. It splits to where you have an option of 2 flags to attack. Now, my personal thought process is that you want to always avoid unenjoyable games. There's no way that you can ensure that the game you're going to have is enjoyable, but there's definitely a way that you can kind of reduce the chances of you having an unenjoyable game. And to me, an unenjoyable game is avoidable on Kora Valley AAS when you stack your team onto one flag. Because sometimes what will happen is you'll have one squad go for Orchard and one squad go to Radio. And that's a gamble, right? Either they both win and you're in a really good spot, or you lose both, and now you're in a really, really bad spot. And one of the safest ways you can play this game and avoid having an unenjoyable game is to ensure you get one of these caps. And you can do that by stacking the entire team onto one cap. Right here, you can see we have maybe 3 guys on radio just to see if they could get it. And luckily, the Russians sent no one. But I would advise, it's my personal advice, if you want to avoid having a hard time, just focus on one of the caps when you're offered a split cap. Just make sure you stack your team on one. That way you can guarantee this one. And then from there, you can guarantee or work towards the second one. Rather than losing both, and now you're really behind, and it's just unenjoyable for the rest of the game. All right. So as I'm on the way to my move marker, we're right off the break here, as you can tell, because both these caps are white. We're setting for Orchard. We've got my squad, squad 1 with the strikers. Squad 2 and squad 3 are infantry squads. And there's the Pros Humvee over here trying to get on Orchard. Now, already, Squad 3 is engaged. They are calling out a squad on Orchard, and their Humvee is engaging as well. So on my way to my move mark, my brain's already thinking. It's trying to paint the picture of what's going on. I'm looking at my map. I'm thinking, how do I want to handle this? What am I going to be walking into? So as you can hear right there, the 30mm shot around, and my squad picked it up, and I picked it up, and it was like, okay. So the 30mm is going to be on Orchard. So we already know. And Orchard is, knowing the cap zone, it's an elevated position with good cover. It's really hard to attack. So over the comms, the 30mm and the 14.5 have been called out on Orchard. So I'm still walking up. So the first thing you noticed was I stopped the vehicle and I dismounted, and I have my infantry pushing along this. Now, why I did this. Number one, I dismounted the infantry. I told the vehicle to stop because that 30mm was up there. It's in good cover right now. I don't have to worry about it getting sniped. And especially with both BTRs up there with superior lines of sight, I don't want to roll the striker up unless I have eyes on. So I told the striker to wait. I'm pushing up with infantry to get a better feel of the situation. So I'm noticing that there's still cover all the way up to this point. So I tell the striker to come up to me because he's still going to have cover on my left. So at this point, I'm straight up the squad lead. I'm getting the striker ready to see if he can engage the BTRs, if we can catch the BTRs without paying attention. All right, once you get to me, you're gonna... So I already know roughly where this BTR is, and as soon as I look, I can see him. That's the BTR right there. This is the BTR right here. I try to mark it for the striker, because what that does is now when the striker rolls up to this point, they can align with the marks. So just using marks, as efficiently as possible. As they roll up to this mark, they'll have the direct direction of the enemy BTR. So I'm trying to see if we can catch the BTR sleeping, and we don't. BTR immediately puts shots on. I call the vehicle to pull into the rear, right? I tell the vehicle immediately, roll back, because that 30mm will melt through that armor like it's butter, especially with that 14.5 assisting. So I pull that thing back. I drop the vehicle repair system. I don't want to lose the striker, so I tell the striker to sit tight, repair up, and relax. So knowing the situation now, knowing what we're working with, let me see if I pull up the map. Okay. Knowing the situation. Squad 2, Squad 3, and my squad with 5 are pinned down because they've got 2 strikers here and at least 1 infantry squad with superior positioning. Because everything up past this point, this is one large hill that goes up, right? This is one large hill. They've got perfect sight lines everywhere east and south. Okay. So this is like, it's looking kind of bad for us right now, right? Because we're kind of locked in these two compounds, these two major compounds. 2 and 3 are going to try to push around the one avenue they can make, which is around the flank. But my squad is going to be pretty much stuck here for the duration. I'm kind of just trying to keep the striker alive. But one thing that I do note is because we cannot engage either BTR directly with laws, right? We're out of range of laws. We're like 250 meters out. There's no way my law guy is going to land that shot, especially with this wall in front of the BTRs. I know that engaging directly is not an option. The striker is going to lose against 2 BTRs. There's no way I can engage this directly. So what do? I drop the mortar. That's the tool that's going to shift this entire game. That one mortar is going to shift the entire momentum of the early game. So right here, I'm going up for a peek. And I'm trying to gather what I can see off this one peek. I go for a really quick peek. It's going to seem like longer because I obviously paused the video. But I'm just going for a quick snap of what I see here. And I see 3 important things. Number 1, I see the BTRs. We got the 30 mil right here. We got the 14.5 right here. Number 2, I see infantry. So I know it's not just the 2 vehicles. I got infantry up here. So there's going to be a lot of infantry we're going to have to deal with as well. And the third and final thing is I see sandbags. I see sandbags back there. And I'm assuming, okay, they must have a fob up here. Right? So that's what I get with that quick snap. You can see me, I pop up. We took rounds. I pop back down. I tell them to get off the roof because we're getting shot at on the roof. Told them to keep the striker safe. They're rolling the striker back again. But yeah, get the guys off the roof. Get the striker safe. Right now, I just want to minimize casualties and get this mortar up. Drop an ammo crate just to top off the bandages and whoever needs because we have a lot of supplies here. And right now, I'm just focused on minimizing casualties right now and setting up this kind of forward outpost that we're at. So right now, I'm kind of planning in my head what I want to happen. And we're getting ready to mortar the position. Now, there's 3 ways that you can mortar a position. Number 1 is the finger method. It's a really crude but effective method. And I use... And so let me just talk about what the finger method is. I literally take my right thumb and middle finger and size it up to the 300 meter mark. And then lock it into place with that pinch. And then drag my hand across the screen to roughly how far it is. And if it's all the way, then I know it's 300. If it's like halfway, I know it's 150. If it's a little in the middle, I know it's like 200-ish. So that's how I do the finger method. And the finger method can be pretty freaking accurate at anything within 300. I use the finger method for anything within 300 that I need rapid shots on. Like there's not enough time. So that's the pro, is that it's really accurate under 300 and it's relatively quick. The second method you can use for mortars is the Mortar Calculator. And I think if you just Google squad Mortar Calculator, you'll find one. But what that essentially is you plug in the position of the mortar, you plug in the position you want to attack, and it gives you the direct azimuth direction, blah, blah, blah. But note that that's only accurate up to the grid size, right? Because you can be anywhere in this grid. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's probably the most accurate method without correction. That method is good if you have a lot of time to do the Mortar Calculator, because it does take time to plug in those numbers and do all that stuff. It's relatively fast, but still, in my opinion, slower than the finger method. But another pro to the Mortar Calc is it's pretty accurate on the first barrage, and the second thing is it's really easy to do outside of 300. So usually, whenever I have a target outside of 300, outside of my finger method, I use the calculator, because the calculator is accurate. It's not the fastest, but it'll do the job, and it's accurate right off the bat. The third and final method that you can use when you have either A, no time, B, you can't observe, C, it's extremely far, you have no idea the distance, or you don't want to deal with a calculator, is the marker method. And that's the easiest, simplest, most inaccurate, but fastest method ever. So, and all that does is you put down a marker. You put down a marker, and the mortarman can roughly gauge, right, because it tells you the rough distance. It's really inaccurate, but tells you the rough distance of the target, and he can start putting down rounds because it also lines up on the compass for him. So it's a really easy, really crude, inaccurate, but extremely fast method. So, those are the 3 major methods that I use. So once again, that's the finger method. I'll get the distance with this, with pinching the ranger. And then the second one is the Mortar Calc, and the third one is the marker method. So, talking about the 3 methods that we just discussed, in this situation, we're kind of safe. Like, we've got high walls around us. I'm not too worried about time. So, I tell them to calc it in, because I want this to be pretty accurate off the first barrage. The main reason being, if we miss too far with the first barrage and I need to make multiple corrections, they're just going to pull off the hill and we're not going to maximize casualties. So I want the barrages to land relatively quickly in succession with the corrections. And the Mortar Calc is going to do that because that first barrage from the Mortar Calc is going to be accurate. So I tell him to calc it. I also mark the mortar mark just so that other squads can see that, right? Because my squad is the only one that can see the sword mark, but I mark the mortar mission so the entire team can see, okay, we're sending mortars over there. And the reason why I move the target mark is because it gives the mortarman a direct azimuth to fire on. I use the squad markers to get the mortarman on target. So we peaked right there. What did we see? Tell me you got him dialed. Alright, so he's dialing it in with the mortar calc. We're standing by to fire. I tell him to send 3. Now, the reason why I send 3 rounds to fire is because, 1, deviation can mess with your correction. If you fire 1 round and the deviation makes it look like it's on target and you fire for effect, it could be pretty far off. So I send 3 rounds and then grab the average of the 3 rounds, right? So if there's deviation to the north, west, and then south, I just grab the center point, and that's where I know my roughly where my rounds are going to land. I don't want to use a single round because the deviation, if I just go off of that, it could cause problems. So I always arrange with 3. So I go for another peek here, and we're looking at, once again, what do we see? We see that number 1 BTR, number 2 BTR, infantry's pushed off, and I see a vehicle repair station. So they're here. In my opinion, what I see from this is they're going to be here a while unless we do something about it. They're just going to sit up there, repair, rearm, and just slay the entire valley. And right now, all 3 squads up here in the north are in a bad pause. 2 and 3 locked on that north side, and my squad's pinned by these 2 BTRs. So I know we got to do something about this. So he snaps at me. I keep my head down. You can hear me counting in the background. I'm counting to 20, and that's because it roughly takes about 20 seconds for rounds to land. And I don't want to stick my head up before those rounds land because that BTR is going to grab me. So I'm kind of counting it down, waiting. And as these rounds land, I'm going to peek up, grab a quick correction, and feed it to him. So I feed him the correction after counting.
Drop 10 mils.
I saw those rounds landed short. Now, corrections. We're going to talk about corrections. Number 1. When you're using the mortar and you're calling corrections under 50 meters, any correction within 50 meters of the target area, I use mils. So I'll say if it's left or right off, I'll tell them left X degrees or right X degrees. And then as far as distance, I'll tell them to drop or add mils. Now, it's important to remember, when you drop mils, you're adding distance. When you add mils, you're dropping distance. It's inverse. The reason why I do this is because it's really easy for me to gauge. Like, if I need to add 10 mils, I know how far that is just from experience. And he knows he just has to put input directly 10 mils and subtract that. Whether if I said, all right, I need 5 meters subtracted from that last blast, it's harder for him. And I might know what it looks like to me, but to him, and keeping a constant range, it gets really confusing when you start using meters because the ranger on the mortars, or the sight, the mortars, uses mils. So anything within 50, I recommend using X degrees left and right, and then X amount of mils added or dropped. If it's anything out of 50 meters, so let's say we're way off target, and we're like 100 meters off, then I'll tell them to correct by using the meter system. They'll say add 50, add 100, drop 50, drop 200, drop 300, whatever it is. Any large increments in the correction, I use anything above 50, I use meters. Anything under 50, I use mils.
Send 6. Say, drop 10 mils. Drop 10 mils, send 6.
So I tell him drop 10 mils. He's going to drop 10 mils and send 6. So these are still kind of ranging for me, but I also want to do more damage with this. Because if I just send 3 and these are on target, then they're going to move. And by the time the next 3 get sent, it's going to be a bit rougher. Or it's going to be a bit less effective because they're going to push off after this 3. If I think my rounds are going to be on target on this next shot, but they're not completely ranged, I don't tell them to fire for effect. I just tell them to range with more shots. That way, if they are on target, we get an extra 3 rounds in, and it can cause more casualties. But if they aren't off topic, or if not off topic, but if they aren't on topic, on target, they aren't on target, then we don't waste too many rounds. Right now, looking at my map, I can see 2 and 3 are set to push, and we're not firing for effect yet. We're not really we're not ready for them to go. If they push right now, those BTRs are still in position. Like those BTRs are gonna mow them down as they come up the hill. So I yell over comms 2-3 stage, stand by. So 2 and 3 call standing by. They're gonna wait for my go on the mortars, and we're still waiting. I see the mortars are good. I tell 2 and 3 to push. Because if those mortars were off and 2 and 3 pushed, we could have ran into some problems with the BTRs getting ready. Now, I see this guy on my right. I'm not really giving a care about him right now, but I make a really dumb decision. But right now, I see mortars are denying this area. Infantry's pushed off the hill. We have maybe a couple over here, but right now is probably going to be the best time for my squads to push, 2 and 3 to push. Because the BTRs are gone and no one's up on this this building. So they're going to run into contact, but it's not going to be nearly as much as it was before. I give my mortarman one more correction, right 1 degree.
Striker, push out. You're free to engage.
So I tell my striker as well to push out. And this is where it gets really dynamic, and we can talk about force multipliers and how to multiply certain things. So, remembering that everything is created to support the infantry. Every asset ever created was made to support the infantry, right? Mortars, vehicles, whatever it may be, air assets were all meant to support the infantry. So, let's look at the 3 elements we have going on. We have the infantry on the right. We have the mortars pretty much in the center, and my strikers pushing the right. So, the things that are important here. If we had let's say we just sent in the infantry, right? What would have happened was those 2 BTRs in the center, they would have destroyed literally all the infantry, right? If we had just done the mortars, what would have happened was they would have just pulled the vehicles back. They would have gotten to buildings and just waited for the barrage to end and then come back out. If I'd sent the striker, we would have just gotten the striker lost because, once again, those 2 BTRs were messing everything up. But we throw all 3 of these into the same pot, and you see a lot of cool things happening at once. And it's just remembering that everything used together with the infantry is going to make everything so much better. So we start with mortars. Mortars deny the area with the BTRs. Okay, that relieves the pressure on the striker and the infantry. Striker and the infantry can now push. Infantry pushes up the right, striker pushes in. Now, what this does is as the infantry get closer, right, the enemy defenders are going to want to come out and defend naturally. As they feel that infantry pressure, as they feel those shots coming closer and closer, they feel that infantry pressure getting closer and closer, they're going to want to come in. But the mortars are still denying the area for the BTRs, and the striker now not having to worry about the 14.5 or the 30 millimeter BTR, is now out and has optics on the doorways. So as they come out to defend against the infantry, they're going to get knocked down. So making sure you use everything together. If we just used the mortars and the infantry, it would have been great. But then we don't have that suppression with the striker optics or firepower. And the defenders could have easily walked around the mortar target fire zone and engaged the infantry. But with that striker, locks down more areas.
Both BTRs on the top of both BTRs have been pushed back.
So I call out that both BTRs have been pushed back just to help paint the picture. That guy's peeking me on the right. I get a little cocky and I try to peek him, but he's got me dialed and I get 1 tap. So that was a little greedy of me. I'm in a safe spot, so it's not that bad. But looking at the map, there's no real reason for me to do it. I tried to get a cheeky shot off, but I got caught with it. And I got punished for it. But 2 and 3 now making good progress up here, right? Because if the strikers were here, this is bad, right? The strikers were the BTRs would have knocked him out. Excuse me. Striker now pushed out of cover. He's watching the entire left side of the compound, so he's got eyes on there. And my mortar's running low on ammunition, but we're still denying the space right here. This incredibly important area for the BTRs. So I'm gonna get picked up here. You can see 2 and 3 making good time. They're pushing in pretty aggressively.
So right now is the closest you're ever gonna fire. Push it 50 out, 50 in.
So I'm telling my mortarman to walk rounds. Now we'll talk about walking rounds really fast. So walking rounds is to drop rounds consecutively and incrementally in a certain direction, whether that be out, in, left, or right. So if we walk the rounds left, it means we're firing at our current position and gonna fire X amount of degrees left, walking those rounds left. So we'll fire maybe 1 degree left, 1 degree left, 1 degree left, 1 degree left, 1 degree left. Firing around at every degree. Same thing walking them right. Now, for walking out and in, it means we're going to fire at our current target position. And if we walk it out, that means we're firing further. We're going to walk the rounds out. So I told him to walk it 50 meters out. So he's going to drop a round incrementally out to 50 meters. And he's going to roll those rounds out to 50 meters. Now, I told him the second part was to roll those back 50 meters, to roll those in 50 meters, excuse me. So after he rolls them out further 50 meters, he's going to revert and start walking them back towards his original firing position. So once again, target fire zone, walking it left means we're dropping around. Let's say I want it to walk it left to 5 degrees, right? So we're dropping around 1 degree, dropping another, dropping another, dropping another. And then let's say I want him to walk it back 5 degrees. Then he's doing the same thing, and he's just walking it back to his initial fire zone. Dropping it 1, dropping it 3, dropping it 4, and back on his 5. So the order I gave him was 50 out and then 50 in. So he's going to go 50 meters out. Let's say that's just 50 meters from the target zone. And then he's going to fire incrementally along that way, going out. And then I told him to walk it back in 50 meters, right? So that's essentially what he's doing. And the thought process behind this is, as they're getting shelled at their current position, they're going to fall back, right? You saw this BTRs, you saw that infantry fall back. We're chasing them back with the mortars. Now, as they get chased back with the mortars, I want to walk those rounds back in towards us to make sure as the infantry on my squad, or my team pushes in, we're mopping up whatever infantry stayed behind that mortar shot. But we're trying to just maximize casualties with the rounds right now. Because we already dropped like X amount of rounds on target zone A, right? So let's say this is a target zone, right? And we saturated this area with fire. Any more rounds in this area are not going to be effective. I want to spread the rounds out, so we're spreading them out in this way, and then we're going to walk them back in and make sure we clear that again one last time for the infantry, right? Because if we just completely dust everything in this box, any further rounds are useless. And we just accidentally reset it. We'll be back here. Okay. So as we push up, you can start to see, yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much the majority of that engagement after the mortars. You can see all the squads are now pushing up to great effect. We're firing the last of our mortars, like the last 9 or so rounds. And so we push the BTRs back. All the squads are pushing up. And, yeah, really relieved a lot of that pressure with the mortars. So, this video is mainly talking about how you can use multiple parts to benefit the whole, right? Using the infantry, the vehicle, and the mortars. You can see I really said, like, get the fuck in there with the striker because his BTRs got pushed back. I saw that opening. You want to play as much pressure as possible. 2 and 3 now literally on top of them, 5 as well. And my squad now, after firing those rounds, we're now pushing up onto the left flank. So it's just seeing the problem to BTRs on a hill, knowing how to deal with it, use indirect mortar fire, and capitalizing. Not just pushing those BTRs back, but capitalizing on that and telling everyone, okay, hold until mortars, push after mortars, and just seeing it work out very well. I think this was a good demonstration of how to use multiple assets to really just make the whole plan work. And it worked pretty well. We took a couple casualties, but as you see, as we get on the point, we're taking the cap.
Alright, don't push too far with the striker. You're good right there.
I tell the striker to hold. He's pushing a little too far. She doesn't overextend. And you can see the ticker for Orchard start going down. So, yeah, just a recap. Make sure that everything you're doing is supporting the infantry. You have some kind of infantry movement in addition to whatever you're doing, because that helps a lot. Make sure that you're minimizing casualties wherever possible. Pull the striker into cover. Get my guys into cover. Tell them to not move if possible, if that'll help. Getting good recon on and observing your mortar shots. See me go for a couple peeks earlier on and make sure that I'm making sure that the rounds are landing, getting the adjustments down, and then firing quickly. It's all about speed, right? Because if I'm too slow in the corrections or if I'm too slow in the mortar shots, they're just going to move too much and it's not going to be accurate. You got to get practice down enough to know how to correct it, know the mils to drop, know the degrees to go left or right, and to get real accurate with the mortar and do it quickly. Speed is key when it comes to mortar, because if you do it too slow, it's inaccurate. They've moved or, yeah. So that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below. This was also an opportunity for me to really talk about a little bit more in depth on how I use the mortar. I'll talk more in depth about another video where I talk about the mortars more in depth and like how to really become an effective mortar team, like both with the spotter and with the mortarman. So that'll be a whole nother video because there's so much I could talk about with them. But I hope this video helped you as a squad leader kind of understand certain decisions you can make and, in this situation, how to deal with things you can't handle directly. the answer is indirect fire. And not only that, but following up after. The follow-up is incredibly important. Because if we just push them back, they'll just come back. So you got to capitalize on the momentum. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, this was a bit of a long one, but we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to check out Humble Monthly for over $100 worth of games every month for just $12. You'll also get 10% off their entire store, fund a charity, and support this channel all at the same time. Check it out in the description below.